Welcome to our first recorded edition of Gray Matter. This is our July 4th edition. I am David Madalena, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, Mr. Robert Lee Davis. How are you today, Rob?
Good. How are you? I'm warm. It's warm here.
It's warm. It's getting warmer here. It's been actually kind of on the chilly side here in
Okay.
Colorado.
What is chilly to you in Colorado?
Oh, we when I say chilly, I don't really mean I mean chilly for this time of year, for June going into July. We've actually had some like 70-degree days, 69-degree highs. We've had a lot of rain, which is really odd for us. Actually, it's starting to get dry around this time.
Hmm.
We used to get sometimes, when I first moved here, I was like, Colorado lied to me, damn it. I first moved here, and like we moved here from Chicago, Jackie and I, and every time I came here, it was in the
Yes, you
summer.
did.
What's that? What'd you
Yes, you did. Move you were
Yeah.
previously in the big windy city.
In the Windy City, yes, absolutely. Love Chicago, actually, except for the weather. That was one of the reasons. And so we moved to Colorado Springs. And one of the things we noticed when we would visit our friends in Colorado Springs was it would rain like in the afternoon. And you get like an hour long bit of rain, and it kind of cooled things
Okay.
off. And then it was still warm, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, again, this was 2001. This is almost 20 years ago. Yeah, weather has changed. And
A little bit. A
just a
little bit.
little bit,
Yeah.
just a little bit. Um, and so the nights would be nice and cool, but then you'd get the hot sun again because we're so close to the sun compared, mile
Mm,
high up. Actually,
okay.
Colorado Springs is even higher; it's over 6,000 feet. And so yeah, it was like, wow, Colorado weather is amazing because you get the sun, but then you also get a cooler night. You can sleep really good. It was really, and I love the dry heat, and the dry heat is true; it does help. But Anyway, it's not like that anymore. It's like we don't get as much of that rain. It's in there's cycles in this region as well because of the mountains. But yeah, it's
Okay.
so now we've been getting a lot of heat. So this year we've gotten a lot of rain, which is really good because we get dry and get wildfire problems as well, which will probably arise
Right.
for
Right.
us, but not like they're having on the West Coast. So we're lucky in that aspect. But yeah, it's been
Yeah, we just get heat over here. Like it's not there's no major effects to the people
yeah.
except they don't want to go outside. Like there's no wildfires here. It's 93 degrees and it's hot in
Well,
the city.
yeah, because you're in a concrete oven. I mean, really, it's like, and that was
I
one
mean,
of
I love it. I love New
no, no,
York,
no,
but
no,
yeah,
and I'm not saying that as like a criticism. It's just a fact, right? I mean, it's just there's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of stone in buildings, and the sun is hitting that, and you're not absorbing as much or
but
deflecting as
I
much
seek out
heat.
green space as often as I can.
Yeah,
So
Central Park was a godsend when I lived in New York. I loved it.
Central Park, Prospect Park, Fort
Hmm.
Greene Park,
Yeah.
all of it.
I had a pretty sweet deal in New York.
And
I did. So I mean,
you what?
I had a pretty sweet deal where I lived in New York. It was pretty cool because I was like right off
When
of
in the hotel,
in this hotel, the Alcott Hotel, right off of Central
that's
Park
like
West.
still I can still picture the room. Like
Oh
yeah,
yeah. The It was just two rooms, and it was
yeah,
funny is for New York, it was like a badass apartment in Manhattan, right? Now I look at it, I'm like, my God, this studio is the size of one of those rooms that I'm in, and it's like
right.
it's just kind of crazy to think about. And this isn't that big of a studio.
Wow.
Those are fun days though. But New York is hot as hell, and Chicago is like hella hot and humid in the summer.
Mm,
Yeah, so Chicago, greatest city in the world with the worst weather to accompany it is what I would say about Chicago because it's this badass
okay.
city. It's got a lot of the great things New York has, only on a slightly smaller, I would say more, I don't know, homier scale in a weird. I don't know if
It's
that's the
di-
right word.
it's the second closest city that I can think of in the United States that
Yeah.
offers what New York offers.
Yeah,
You know?
the pace is slower in Chicago though. That was something that was interesting. It
Yeah.
has a little bit of that midwestern pace. But yeah, man, Chicago summers were hot and the winters were brutal. And we don't like tell everybody, but Colorado's weather is just amazing, really, compared to that. I know you don't agree, but it is. But we're not here to talk about the weather, right? It's July. This is our July 4th show. Um,
Yes.
this is the first time we're pre-recording. We're used to doing the live thing. So, but just so everybody out there who's watched us doing the live one before, we would love to get your comments again. But and feel free to
Yes.
comment and maybe throw some ideas of topics you'd like us to talk about. This is obviously, Hemp Connoisseur and AC Magazine is a cannabis publication, but this is kind of our non-cannabis conversation because cannabis people can talk about other things too. And for those of you who are listening for the first time, Rob and I have been best friends since college, and we,
The
just
90s.
the '90s, yeah. And so we've kind of loved talking politics and just culture, and
Oh my God. If
we
there
did,
was a video, I'm glad there isn't. I'm glad I'm not part of this generation that films everything they do
mm,
because I can picture many alcohol infused nights on
yes,
the lawn
oh yeah,
in front of
yeah.
the house.
We used to get in like we're professional at arguing with each other. For those of you who don't know, it's like I kind of because I feel like we have to do a little mini intro because it's a recording now. I don't know why. I'm like this is
Oh my
kind of like
God.
let's,
Yeah, sure.
but
Why not? Why not?
we because we used to get up and animate and yelling at each other and like I can't believe this. But like it is like it's all kind of pared down where like I think we've trained each other on how to deal with people you don't agree with sometimes, and like it's good. It's been
Mm,
good. It's been
good,
fun.
yeah, good times, good
Yeah.
conversation.
So we wanted to do something a little differently with while we're doing this recordings because when we're doing the current live, right, everybody, it's more of a hey, let's talk about what's going on today because a lot of times when it's live and it's kind of gone like in a radio version. I love that format. But I know Rob loves that
Mhm.
format too, but our schedules are super conflicting right now, so it was
Yes.
just not going to work anymore. So we're going to do these recorded. So with these recorded ones, we're going to start doing like we're kind of picking topics ahead of time, going, hey, we're going to talk about this. This is our July 4th show. So what did we decide we were going to talk about a little bit today, Rob?
The Bill of
The
Rights.
Bill of Rights. And look, in what we're kind of expecting to be about an hour-long show, there's no way we're going to cover all of the Bill of Rights.
No,
So we are looking. We may do a series of these, right? I mean, let's see where we
right.
go. Well, let's start with the
But we
first
may not
one.
get past the first one. We
We
may
may
not get past the first
we exercise the first one a lot, so and it's possible we may not get past the first one. And so yeah, it's kind of funny when you think about that. So
one. Well,
there's the Bill of
can
Rights.
I just start off by
Yeah,
saying that to me, as a jumping off
yeah,
point in regards to the Bill of Rights and it's the 4th of July weekend coming up, that this is a legal, enactment in 1789 about the rights of people, but
people.
the black people weren't free for almost 75 more years.
Yes, yes.
This
So
is the framework structure of what we work under.
yes, so there has to be an acknowledgement, and I hate it when can we not look at the good and the bad at the same time, right? Like I think that's the thing. Is like there is so much good in our Constitution and in
And the ideas and principles, yeah.
yeah, and my favorite is and honestly, I believe in the preamble of the Constitution is a powerful statement, and I think there's a lot of good there. But if we don't recognize that there's also hypocrisy, and I mean, because
Yeah.
if you can't recognize that our founding fathers were also flawed human beings like us, I mean, like
Yes, they were misogynistic slave owners.
there you go.
Like, come on,
To
the
put it
notion
to
that
be
they're
more
always
specific, you're right though. I mean, no. I'm just I say flawed. You're like, let me go right to it, and you're absolutely right. They were, and also let's be clear, they didn't just create this thing from nothing. Like they invented all of these ideas that are in our Constitution. I mean, they were taken from various other documents and like
yeah,
put together into kind of a way that America is supposedly put together, right? We're a mishmash of all these different cultures and ideas, and they said, "Hey, we like that idea. We like this idea. We like what. Hey, look what the Romans did here. Look what the Greeks did here. Look at the Magna Carta. Look at all these different things. It wasn't like the United Kingdom didn't have some of the principles in here that were stolen and taken. I don't want to say stolen because that's what it is, right? But
yeah,
when James Madison put together the Bill of Rights, he looked at all of these other like avenues, and along with the other founding fathers, and they said, how can we, borrow from them? What do we like about this? And so I think that's something to be understood, is that this isn't like a free, like just sprouted from America all by its own, like we invented democracy. And I think sometimes that's the historical thought mindset of some
Right.
Americans, right? Is that like we were the first democracy. It's just not the case.
No,
Um, and so,
and we're still striving to be one, right?
right.
We're which is a good way to sort of, like I said, I don't know if we'll get past the first one,
Probably
right? But if we start with the first one, right? So
Yeah.
let me see here. Let me just
So should we pull up the exact
yeah, I have the exact language right here with the first.
here? I have it right here. It's just popped up. All right. So do you want to read it? You got it?
Okay.
Go for it.
Um, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. That's a lot.
I was just it's an incredibly and that's one of the things I do love about the writing of this, is how packed some of the
Yeah.
language is. Now, and some of it gets actually gets a little too legalese if you go down it in a way, and it's
Mm,
kind of nice to, when they start going into, the later amendments, which are, I think some of the later amendments, we can cover like 3 or 4 of them in one conversation, really, because it's all about how do we try people for crimes, right? And like, how do
right.
we treat people? And those are important. And it's really interesting that those are a few of the amendments in there instead of just one big amendment. I always thought that was like, isn't that all one kind of,
Mm,
but to the First Amendment, it also, I agree that everything in there should be in there at the same time. And I'm not a religious person, right? And I know you were a very spiritual person. I know you come from a family where, your
mhm.
dad is pastor the proper term, or minister,
Yeah,
or
who's a pastor? My mother's a pastor now.
and your
Yes.
mother's a pastor now as well, right? So
Ministers who then is a pastor of his own church. Yes, yes.
yes. So coming from a family, being a preacher's son, is, I
Mhm.
know, son of a preacher. That's the term. I'm sorry, son of a preacher. Uh,
Oh,
great song. Um, it's interesting because I think the first thing is it's about religion first. Um,
right.
and it also comes down to what's the frame mind of who our founding fathers were. I mean, and I believe that they were much more entrenched in the idea of religion because of the one of the reasons of the founding of the colonies, right, was a
Hmm.
place. That's what you would look at for the Mayflower and Plymouth Rock, and like, when you talk of those stories, is they came here for freedom of religion, and to practice their religion of
Yes, the Church of England had too much sway in people's lives.
yes, yes. um and so, and it's very valid. I mean, I think, again, not being a religious person, I believe that everybody has the right to practice their religion the way they choose to practice it, as long as it doesn't infringe on anybody else's rights. And
Exactly.
that's the
Exactly.
statement that's kind of missing there. Like, I wish that, like, is Congress should make no law respecting the establishment of religion that does not inflict, that is something that does not stop the rights of other people. There's got to be something in there where you can say, look, you can practice whatever you want as long as you're no longer infringing on my rights. And I think that's the part that I feel is missing.
Okay. Okay.
um,
I see that. It's
y-
curious, yeah, that it's not framed, and I believe that there's a reason. So I'm going to try to sit here and process what that reason might be, why they did it.
well, and maybe they didn't even foresee that was a problem. I mean, there is that possibility that you don't feel like, well, my religion isn't infringing on somebody's rights. My religion makes everybody feel better about themselves and
Well,
makes them act
that
better.
is a key piece of it. Even when you mentioned the preamble,
Hmm.
like the, we as a country are currently today, as we sit here, we're recording this as Fourth of July weekend rolls around, existing, functioning, and trying to align ourselves with a document that is over 200 years old, right?
Hmm.
almost, well, not almost 300, but over 200 years old. That was only designed for these white guys in this room. Like we, the people, meant like them. Hey Ben. Hey, John. What's up, Quincy? Like that's who
Mm-hmm.
it was for.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So
Well, absolutely. I mean, they and that's what's interesting about it too, right? Is you have this idea of freedom of religion. The whole time this is going on, these guys are slave owners. A lot of them are slave owners. I don't know if every one of them was, but many of them were slave owners. So,
like their enslaved property, which it was for some of them, could have been outside of the hall with the horse and buggy waiting for them to finish their daily writing for the day
oh,
of
absolutely, absolutely.
our principles.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's it's all to look at all of it to really, because like when you just said that, why would they have that line? Because maybe, well, they were all so similar. It
Yeah.
wasn't about other people.
That's
It was
that. I
about
mean, that's and
them.
that's a very good point. You're already in this homogenized viewpoint,
Yeah.
right? And so you're not looking at it like, well, my religion might infringe on somebody else's rights or religion. So that's not part of that conversation, right?
Right.
And it is interesting. It, I mean, my favorite one is the
As
next.
someone who's not religious, though, you are appreciative of this as a club.
Yeah, but also there's something missing in there and I also, I mean, atheism is not considered a religion.
It wouldn't be.
No, but it is a belief system, and I think that's something it's so. Is the conversation
Okay.
really about religion, or is it really about belief systems? You know what I mean? Like, because like because I do believe that atheists can be ostracized and have been, and like for example,
But they
you
haven't had their rights taken away
do
from
you
them.
think? Oh, really? Well, they have possibilities taken away from right now in the current viewpoint of our society. I think. Like, even though I think probably atheists probably make up about 20%, or I mean, is my guess of the population. Like, really, I don't believe this stuff. All right, um, and I just threw that stat out. Somebody else is like, that's totally not true. Maybe it's. I have no idea. I didn't do a study. I'm just like, real world guessing.
Just spitballing.
I'm guessing
Yes.
2 out of 10 people may not believe that there's a God. Okay,
Yeah.
for various whatever reasons. Um, they do you think somebody who doesn't believe in God has a right to be president of the United States?
Yes.
Do you think somebody who does not believe in God is somebody who is an atheist? Do you believe they will ever get elected as president of the United States, though?
I think it would be a difficult road to climb presently, because I think for many people, for people who are of faith or have a spiritual guiding center, however people want to frame it, um, that's a very heavy job, right?
Sure.
And so they put asshole in it for the last 4 years. But apart from that, it's a heavy job
Yeah.
which intelligent people have to lead.
Hmm.
Um, and you're going to have to make some tough decisions. I think people want to, for people who are of any kind of practicing theism, they go to that space for encouragement and growth and focus.
Mm.
And I think people would wonder, well, where do they go? Where is their well of whatever that is to make those
Hmm.
strong decisions?
Well, one could make the argument that a deeply religious person in office is more dangerous, because they might feel that they have some type of a mandate from God to believe whatever they are doing is right. I mean, it's that idea of,
They do, but I will, for whatever safeguards there are on the presidency, even though I don't know, still don't know how to characterize Trump, but for whatever safeguards that there are, that type of person, I feel would have presented themselves already. He could have been that person. He's just stupid. So he really couldn't be that. He's not politically slash religiously
Mhm.
savvy in a Jerry Falwell, Billy Graham
Yeah, but we were
kind of.
we were heart attack away from Mike Pence, though. You know, I mean, we were
But
one slip down the stairs, down some wet stairs or something, from him cracking his head and dying, to Mike Pence, who
trying
absolutely.
to walk down a ramp, trying to walk
Yeah,
down a ramp.
exactly. It says, yeah, trying to walk down around. And so, I mean, then you have someone like Mike Pence who believes in the weird way that he does, that he's got some kind of mandate from God to do whatever he does. And
But even if he does, there's still limits, which is the purpose of this, document overall. That there's still limits to, like, if Mike Pence believed that abortion should be illegal, and immigrants should be rounded up, and women who have abortions should go to jail. Even if he believed all of those things, he can't. He doesn't have the mandate to just make them happen. There's still a legal process that has to be
yeah,
moved.
but when in the heat of a moment, when there comes time to make choices for military or whatever, I mean, that's a different story, and you might make choices because you think I honestly, I'll tell you the truth, man. I believe that religion. I don't mind. I don't mind moderate religion. I guess that's the thing I'm trying to say. Like, if you are
Okay.
somebody who believes in God, great. I'm not saying I'm somebody who has no idea. I'll be honest. Nobody's shown me a fact, one way or the other, to prove that there is no God, or that there is a God. So I'm an agnostic who believes that I know what right and wrong is without somebody telling me. Um, I believe
Okay.
I believe that my conscience can tell me if something
Although
is
I
right
don't
or
know
wrong.
that I would. That's too easy of a default for me. Like, I definitely have a great, and sometimes I don't know whether to say God or gods because I have such a wide view of what I believe that spiritual space is. But
Sure.
someone who believes in God, but it's not because of that I know the difference between right and wrong.
Right.
Like, I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's just. I think that's too easy of a default for people's sense of spirituality, and I actually blame in many ways, I blame the church in quotes
Mm-hmm.
for people having such a negative view toward it because of the ways that many powerful people within it have abused their power and authority.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, honestly, I think some of the largest atrocities, systemic atrocities over the history of man, have been because of the church, or justified by the church, is even a better way to put it. And I think that's my thing is, an atheist is going to have a harder time justifying a horrible act. Right? I mean, like, you can, like, God told me to do this. I believe that this is our mission, is, blah blah blah. You could say George Bush used that a little bit. George W. Bush used that a little bit in his thinking,
For
his
the post 9/11.
justifications. Yes, absolutely. Like, he's had statements where he felt he was put there by God in the right time, and it's just,
I think the thing that gets me is if people don't. I'm more puzzled by people who don't believe, who are agnostic, or more specifically who are atheists. Um, at the offense towards people who are. I'm not atheist. I can't. I don't comprehend atheism. I don't know. I couldn't imagine being it. Like, my sense of spirituality is too strong. I don't knock or have a negative view towards anyone who is atheist, but I feel many people, or a large number of people who I've encountered, who identify as atheists, do have a very negative reaction towards anyone who identifies as spiritual or mentions it. God forbid that they say it during, like, a campaign event or something. Like, it's too much for them.
Mm-hmm. And I get what you're saying on that too, right? I think, I mean, you could look at someone like Bill Maher, who is a famous atheist, right? He's one of the more famous atheists out there, and
He's a famous many things, but we'll go with atheist for right now.
yeah, right. In this conversation, okay.
Yes.
And so I think it's and yeah, he's definitely Religulous is a great example, and he did that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and actually, by the way, I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was good, but he is ridiculing in a way. I mean, he's in a lot of ways he's ridiculing, but
Yeah.
he also, it was interesting the way way it was approached. But that's not what I'm talking about. I think that the problem that I think some atheists have, again, is somebody sitting on the fence who's just like, hey, I don't know, maybe I'm an atheist, maybe I'm not. I mean, I'm like, to me, that's what I think. Really, most of us are agnostic, and we don't want to admit it. Honestly,
Most of us are what?
I think most of us are agnostic. Some are religious as an insurance clause. I
Oh,
really
I
do.
don't know.
I, I,
I don't think that we really have any concept of who is, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
That we don't really have any concept of who is religious, who isn't, who's spiritual, who we just have belief systems based on the world or circles which we run in.
yeah, that's a good way to
You
put
know?
it too. Yeah, sure. I don't know. I just think that there is a little bit of an annoyance from some atheists with religious people because they feel like, much like a Republican and a Democrat might disagree with each other, is they'll look at choices that are being made in society that are influenced by religion, politically or for different reasons, and like they look at religion as the root cause of why they're dealing with these issues. Like, to them, like, pro-life, for example, pro-life is very much a religious, like, religion is very entrenched around pro-life, the pro-life movement, compared to the pro-choice movement, which tends to be more about rights, and freedom. And so I think
I
that.
mean, the pro-life movement will say that they are focused on the rights and freedom of the unborn, right? That's how they will
Mhm.
phrase it.
Yes,
I mean, I'm 100%. I'm like 3,000%
right.
pro-choice.
I understand.
The it is a real religion gets used to manipulate it because I think there are people who are not quote unquote religious who are also pro-life. I don't think it's totally just a religious based conversation. It's a Mother Earth, nature, like I can't think of how to describe it, kind of thing, right? It's not just solely in religion, but
Mhm.
I I don't think the life of atheists are affected, right? We could have a separate show about that. I'm sure there's someone who is atheist who would want to school me on all the ways that I'm wrong. I'm not seeing it.
You don't think? Well, first of all, um, just looking at, I mean, and just looking at the world in general, right? I mean, all you have to do is look at the Middle East and go,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is a region that's been entrenched in war for centuries now, basically. And a large amount of that has been based on religion. A large amount of the viewpoints, a large amount of the strife in those regions have been started or based around religion. Now we can make arguments now. No, it's more about oil, or it's more about the ethnicity, and I mean, but like the beginning of that was more of a religion side of things, and that's just we're looking at
Yeah.
anyway. So I don't want to go deep into that dive either. It's supposed to be about the Bill of Rights, but this we're still in the first
But
line
it's
of the bill. We're
interesting
still in
because
the first
everything that
line.
we're doing right now,
Yeah,
we live in a country that because of that,
yeah,
we can sit on a streaming platform,
whatever.
have this
Yeah,
conversation, right? Those are aspects, even though I do think that I don't like holding up the founding fathers as these like ideals of perfection or
no,
something,
of course not.
but there are there are aspects of the language that I have a great appreciation for because it allows us to function
Mhm.
in culture now. Like I'm just going to move just the very next thing,
Yeah, let's do it.
so we can talk about the entirety of that clause is the abridging of freedom of speech, right? So
Yeah.
we have that as a right. And we
Hmm.
were talking about this. We might as well continue the conversation pre-show,
Oh yeah,
right?
we touched on this. Yes,
Um, so yes, freedom of speech, right?
my
I
favorite one, by the way.
whenever
My favorite one.
your favorite one.
It is.
When people say that in the United States you have freedom of speech, but you don't have the right to yell fire in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is that's a lie. You do have the right to yell fire in a crowded theater. You are an autonomous being with a body and a voice. We all have the right to say whatever we want to say. But there are consequences for some of the things that you say, and that's what people have to be aware of. So
Well,
you can yell
but then you don't have a right.
and I don't know if you'll be imprisoned or whatever. Something will happen.
But you
It's
don't have a right then. You have an ability to say anything you want to say.
No, you have the right.
No, because if you
I
had,
don't think on earth we should be telling people that they can't say things. You can say anything you want. You may have to deal with the consequence of what you say.
but that's different. Yeah, I can kill somebody. I can.
No.
I can physically kill somebody, but I don't have the right to kill them because I have consequences for killing them.
Harming another person, right? You can't compare a person using their voice to speak to a person like murdering someone.
The point of the whole fire in the movie theater conversation, right, is if you yell fire in a movie theater and people stampede and kill each other trying to get out, then you are responsible if that was a false alarm.
If you yell fire in a movie theater and people look at you like, shut the hell up, and then go ahead and watch the rest of the movie, nothing's going to happen to you.
Absolutely correct. Yes, it is the context as well, right? Context, yes. And I think that's the thing that's really interesting is it comes down to context in a lot of things. And I keep telling Mia that, by the way, and she hasn't gotten it yet, really. I mean, because and she's a smart kid, but that's one of those I think she is starting to get it. But I was like, it's context, honey. It's like if I say it like this, you know, and you know, whatever example is, I'm not thinking of it off the top of my head, but that's different than if I say it like this in this situation. And if it comes up, then I'm like, that's context, what I'm talking about. And so she's probably grasping it now. I haven't asked her in a while, but it is something that's really important to understand is context. Like anything, right? Like depending on our conversation, if there was a need for me to say the N-word in the context of the conversation, for what, like if I'm repeating something somebody else said and it's the way they say it or something, I can see why it would be valid to do it. I probably could avoid it because
it could be though, but there is an infringement on it, which I actually don't have a problem with. White people cannot, in culture, really get away with saying.
What if they're singing to a rap song?
No.
So you're well, wait a minute now. Hold on. That's bullshit. So I have a right to say it. I have a right to say it. There are consequences if I say it. But if somebody's singing the song and I'm singing along, I can't sing along with an artist who uses it.
No, I'll put it this way. If you are hanging out at a party with a bunch of hip hop loving, I want to make a mixture of people. I'm going to say black people. What if I want to say like a quote unquote urban group of people, right? Mm-hmm. And you are not one of those individuals.
Yes.
Right? You are a white.
If I said that would go so badly, by the way.
No, it depends on your relationship within that world. Right? If you are sort of down in that world.
Grew up in that world. Grew up in it, like say.
It won't necessarily be an issue. If we are at Becky and Brad's wedding reception out in the Hamptons.
Becky and Brad.
And there are no people of color there anywhere. And the song comes on. Don't say it.
Interesting.
That's all I'm saying. Don't say it. Don't be surprised when the video gets out of whoever was recording you from the, production, whatever. It's on you. You can say it if you want to.
You have a right to say it. But there will be consequences. You have a right to be in blackface when you go out on Halloween.
Yes,
there are consequences to it.
There are going to be consequences.
So I think that's a good point, right? There is a freedom of speech, but you have to recognize that there are consequences to that freedom of speech. I'm down with that.
What? Go ahead.
No. Like that goes into the cancel culture thing in a way, right? Because right, it really does. Because it's like they'd be like, "Oh, you're violating my freedom of speech." It's like, no. You said it. You were allowed. Nobody said you couldn't say it.
Right.
You're not going to jail for saying it. You're not going to jail for saying it. The government is not going to do anything to you for saying the N-word. They're not going to do
So,
anything to
but
you for saying something
your
incredibly
sales might
racist.
diminish, your income might
You might lose your
drop.
job. You might lose your
Yeah.
job. And is that a violation of your rights? No, I don't think it is.
No, I don't think so at all.
No.
I do think cancel culture as a term has gotten out of hand. We could totally do an episode about that because I feel like what it means at its core, I have no issue with. What it potentially could become, I don't think it's turned a corner. People think it's turned a corner. I don't think it's actually turned a corner, but it could potentially become a different thing than what it originally could have stood for. But that aside, right? You people, you do have a freedom. I appreciate the freedom of speech. I just wish we're unfortunately, I feel like, caught in a space where we've given people too easy of an out when they violate, right? Because we now live in a culture where if someone says something wrong or offensive, what's asked of them is to apologize. That's it. Are you going to apologize for that statement? When are you going to apologize? We're waiting to hear for an apology from this person. The person says, I apologize, so and so on, and they move on with their life. All we're asking for is an apology. We're not asking for them to change. What are you going to do to become better, to make sure these sort of, all we keep saying is, wow, you shouldn't have said that. You need to apologize. People apologize. I did it with Trump all the time. He apologized.
Yeah.
He apologized.
No,
Why
no, no.
are people so he apologized.
But is it inauthentic as well to like expect them to change? Like, I mean, like now that's society infringing on that person's rights, because you're also saying, okay, so first of all, you're saying there's consequences. The consequences are either you could lose your job, you could lose your reputation, or you probably, but if you apologize, there may be a way to kind of get back to where you wanted to be, right? So there is that. But the next step that you just said is, but they're not expected to change their behavior. Right. Well, that to me is now infringing on their rights. Like when you, if well,
I mean, they don't have to change their behavior.
There you go. You're right. They don't have to. But if you're a person in the public eye, part of me does feel, and this has been argued, right, the Supreme Court and different, and there is a little bit of a difference, right? And they recognize that, if you're a person in the public eye, you could say what you want to say, but you might not have the same status or
right.
or income or whatever you want to. I mean, all those things. If you do this may happen. I mean, again.
And can I tie it into the one right next to it, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press?
Because
the press is who's covering the speech.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And there should be freedom of the press. There shouldn't be freedom of the press to manipulate information, no matter which quote unquote political side of the aisle that's on. But there should be a freedom of the press to report the stories from their perspective. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I think there's something in there that could have helped. Like, and this is kind of interesting. Maybe this is how we look at this. It's like, okay, what would we do now, knowing what we know now, to change this First Amendment? Part of me on the freedom of the press, I feel like there's a little setting in there that could helped make our world better now, and that would be basically how the press was treated up until like the 70s, right? Really, which is, this is something that is a service to the society, and as a service to society, they need to show the facts, and yes, now we have, like, you can have your viewpoint on this channel and this channel, but it used to be everybody watched one of the 3 channels, and those channels had to show you both sides equally, and then just present them, and here you go.
In their most
ideal. Yes.
Yes, they did not do that.
Yes.
Truthfully, wholly. But
no. Correct.
I do agree with what you're saying about the Walter Cronkite era of news journalism and such.
Yeah. And so I think that's the idea, is like, could they have solidified how much of a good service the press could have been, and honestly put the press in a position where they had no choice but to do the job properly. And I think that's and again, that could be considered an abridgment of the freedom of speech. So I understand why it's not necessarily there, but at the same point, it's allowed for the culture we have now, right? With the way you're geared towards your viewpoint. I mean, I just drove down Hampton Avenue, and we haven't mentioned the name yet, or you did actually, but and I don't care. But so it's a road right here, and it's a kind of a main east-west road in a way. Yeah, in south of Denver, south part of Denver, and I'm driving by, and there's like a I don't know if it was a permanent trailer park. It looked all like in a lot of nice RV campers, but they might be semi-permanent, and they go somewhere else, right? And one of them had this huge, massive flag that said Trump won. I mean, huge. Like, this is not a cheap flag. I mean, this guy spent money on this flag. I mean, it was like, I mean, I'm thinking like at least $80 to $100 to get this flag up there, and like minimum, probably more than that. And it's covering like the side of his RV for everybody to see as they're driving. And all I think into myself is, you're a moron. And like,
but he has freedom of speech.
But he has freedom of speech. He does have freedom of speech. And what I thought, all I thought about is the only reason why this guy believes this is because of the way news is today. You know,
Yes.
I mean, really, like Trump would have had a worse ending to his career than Richard Nixon if he existed as a president in the 70s. In my opinion, I mean, he would have been impeached.
Totally.
Because the news would not have been so skewed that 30+% of the population only saw this weird viewpoint that didn't tell the truth. You know,
well, celebrity also. I agree with you, but I have a. Oh, how do I say this really quickly? I think left more progressive, I guess, left leaning, however you want to frame it, networks, the CNN, the MSNBCs. While there are definitely people I appreciate on those channels and shows
Sure.
that to watch, there are plenty of people on those channels who are in their own style as misleading in their presentations as there are people on Fox. Although Fox, I have a whole different issue with because the CNNs, MSNBCs are actually news channels. Fox is an opinion channel.
They are. Yeah,
channel.
Well, and it's from the beginning they lied too, and they'd be like fair and balanced. Remember that was their Fox, fair and balanced, and everyone's like, see, they're fair and balanced. They say they're fair and balanced, so they must be fair and balanced. And it was like,
just but to tag onto what you were saying, the what existed during Nixon's time, and it was the end of that. Celebrity didn't mix with news.
Yes,
news might mention celebrities, right? And celebrity might be somehow a piece of the story, but it wasn't a thing, right? Because of this blurring now, you can create a space where a press, because it's so caught up in entertainment, loses its. They do have the freedom of the press as is given to them, but you would hope that they would act truly as journalists, and that is not as strong as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I almost wish, again, kind of tying back to the religion, like, and we started talking about this or before the show too. One of the things that always drove me crazy about the religious side of things is the tax-free breaks they get. Okay, again, I mean, it's to me that's a disservice to other. Now, you can make the arguments that, because I live in Colorado Springs, which is like the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, really. I mean, it's like, I feel, because like you have Focus on the Family, New Life Church, there's all these like churches that are coming out of there that are the mega churches, and I've literally seen the Dobson family, and when you see them driving around in their like uber expensive cars, and they have their huge houses, and and you have these poor people that are coming to the congregations that are giving them like 10% of their money, just giving them to these people, and it's tax-free money, and it just
yes, but that's where I say I don't disagree with people when they say that they think that it's unfair. I just think that people need to be more open in their understanding that churches, quote unquote, like we were saying before the show, is a very large cross section of buildings. So there are small churches, right, that have 100-person congregations, and there's St. John the Divine.
Yeah.
Those two entities cannot be taxed blanketly equally.
I agree with that statement wholeheartedly and completely. Just like companies that are small compared to large companies cannot be taxed equally either. Although it's skewed because generally the small companies get taxed a higher rate because the big companies can figure out how to not get taxed. And I think that's the thing, that there needs to be something like, yeah, if you're a one church group, I actually am fine with tax free. I think it comes down to like when you hit certain levels of like income, it just needs to be like addressed, in my opinion.
Once your church is functionally bringing in a sort of donation space a minimum of $1 million for me,
yeah, I think that's not a bad level, really. It's still higher than where we get taxed, obviously. But also, one of my big issues with that, really why churches need to be taxed, is when they start jumping in the political arena like wholeheartedly. All right, it's like, because we're supposed to have this separation of government and religion, and I completely agree with that separation. And there's plenty of religious people who believe it, some don't, right? But to me, that separation is really a cornerstone, should be a cornerstone of how we govern in our country.
We don't always. I'm in agreement with the separation of it, but we don't in any way. You go into a courtroom, you have to swear on something.
You can affirm.
Swear on other things,
you
right?
can just, I affirm to tell the truth. You don't have to swear on anything.
True. Though it hasn't been fully dismissed from culture, we still say under God and the Pledge of Allegiance, which I understand why that bothers people, but it's still there. Our money still says in God we trust. So we are not as separate as we claim when we use the arguments about the fact that we're separate.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, you're absolutely right. And every one of those points is something I was going to bring up too. Because, yeah, I mean, we do say in God we trust. I mean, it's like, and when you say that, we'll make no law respecting establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, you're not, by saying in God we trust, but you are putting one religion above the others, aren't you? Because it doesn't say in Allah we trust. It doesn't say in Jehovah. It doesn't say, it says in God we trust. And we all know what we mean when we say in God we trust. We mean Christian.
We know what they meant at that time,
exactly.
Which again goes back to whether the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is a fixed document or a living document that breathes over time.
I think the fact that we're talking about the Bill of Rights, which did not happen at the original declaration and founding of our Constitution, that's a really important point, right? And it was in, what did we say? It started in 1781. The Bill of Rights was finished in 1789, but by 1781 they were discussing putting together a Bill of Rights, and they were like, we need to do this. And the conversations they were having was, why do we need it? Some were saying, why do we need a Bill of Rights? The Constitution covers all of this. And then other people saying, well, the people, and at first James Madison, by the way, was against a Bill of Rights. Mm-hmm. And then after years, he said, oh, the people would feel a lot more secure if we actually wrote down what their rights were.
The white people, yes.
Yes.
Those are the people he's talking about.
He wasn't talking to black people. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
He wasn't talking to his wife.
Yep. And so he did say, okay, we need to put together this Bill of Rights, and he had like 17 articles, and obviously they pared them down, they combined some, and we were left with 10, right? But two of those articles, one did pass, and one is still waiting to be ratified, which is kind of crazy. So, but one is the 27th Amendment now, I believe. The second one became the 27th Amendment, or was it the first one? I'm not here to tell the history of this part, but it is interesting to know, like, so, and my point in making this like long diatribe about James Madison is they recognized that this wasn't perfect when they started, and they looked at it and said, we need to have this, Constitutional Congress to do this. And like, at first you had the, as I read this, you had the anti-federalists, which basically cared more about states' power, right, and less about the federal government. They wanted this Constitutional Congress. They wanted the convention and they were hoping to completely change the Constitution. But the Bill of Rights, and it'd be kind of this bridge to get to get the anti-federalists to kind of come on board. And it was funny because the Federalists were totally against the Bill of Rights at first, and then it became one where they were for it, and the anti-federalists were kind of like, "Oh, wait a minute, we don't get to rewrite the Constitution. We're just going to accept this." And it was an interesting little thing there, right? And that's something that people like I don't think about enough until I read up on it again. I'm like, oh yeah, they're just like people now. These guys were like, we're arguing. Some people are for it, some people aren't. It wasn't like these guys were lockstep the whole way through this process, and they like were. It was like they weren't like the hand of God didn't come down and say this is how things are. I always thought it was funny because we have 10 commandments, right? And then you have the 10 Bill of Rights, which is, I always wondered if there was something going on there, right?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. But they recognized they needed to fix their stuff. So the fact that we have this issue, that to me ties back to religion, because there's also this religion ideal of a book that was written thousands and thousands of years ago that can't be changed or fixed or edited or like amended to recognize, hey, maybe these guys thousands of years ago who said they were divine, influenced by God and wrote this, maybe weren't perfect, and maybe their opinions aren't something we should live by.
People should have that view towards the Bible, towards the Quran, towards the Constitution. People should always have a view to understand that whenever whatever this is, may have been written, times have moved since then.
Yeah, that's right? I think we'll definitely have the Second Amendment in that conversation too.
Oh my God! The next one. Well,
we'll have to do the Second Amendment.
We've got about 10 minutes left, but the next one, clearly, we need like we said at the beginning, we may only get through one, right?
Yep.
Because let's in the last 10 minutes. Let's just the last piece of it is for the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Yes. And those are huge, by the way, as well. And those are very pertinent to today's society. For example, to peacefully assemble, to me, or to petition the government or redress of grievances, or to protest is another, in short, right? Kneeling seems like one of the most peaceful ways to protest.
Certainly does.
Kneeling in
very peaceful.
Very peaceful. You know what doesn't seem peaceful to me? I don't know. Wild guess.
I would gauge an insurrection, possibly.
There you go. Storming the Capitol. That's a pretty.
But they weren't. Like I saw a short clip. I don't know. You end up in this YouTube hellhole. I don't know how I ended up in this space, but all of a sudden it was a clip of the mother of the shaman guy from. He was all dressed.
Did he bring his mommy into it?
No, it was her being interviewed on like 60 Minutes. And look, I comprehend. Most parents are going to defend their children, right? Even if your child is an axe murderer, it's still your child. You're going to try your hardest to defend them. Right. But to hear her say, "Well, he didn't storm the Capitol. Like they let him in. They opened the doors.
They opened the doors.
Like, we saw the video.
We saw the video. Yeah, it's right there. No, this guy gets me. This guy gets me. I can't remember his name, and honestly, I don't care if I remember his name. I just the weird shaman dude, because he basically wanted everybody to see him.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
You weren't trying to be incognito, bro.
No.
All right.
That's not an incognito outfit.
No. You were definitely one of the leaders in the way it looked. All right.
Oh yeah.
And what cracks me up is this guy has shown an immense amount of hubris and white privilege, and white entitlement is a better way to put it. All right, in his thought process.
It is.
Because I remember there was a complaint. He was upset because they weren't serving him organic vegan, in jail, and so that he needed to be released because they weren't giving him vegan food,
right?
Or organic, or whatever the hell it was.
That's a tough one. Like, insurrection, plant-based burger. I don't know which one is more.
I'm sorry.
Focused on.
You know what? What I don't see in any of these rights is the rights to organic.
No,
So yeah,
I don't.
I think he's
But I do love that we have the right as a country to peacefully protest and to watch people challenge people for peacefully protesting is fascinating.
It is. It is.
To me. If there's any instance somewhere where if there's a riot that broke out or whatever, fine. We can acknowledge that thing may have occurred, but it doesn't overshadow the overall peaceful assembly. Whereas the insurrection, people can say what they want about, well, it was just a handful. No, it was more than a handful. And they took over the Capitol.
Yeah. That's not a protest.
Like, that's not what this said.
No, that's an invasion. That's not a protest. And look, I don't like it, but the Proud Boys have a right to peacefully assemble. They have the right to protest. They had a right to walk around with their tiki torches and do their protest, but once they were confronted and they got violent, you also have the other people and the right to protest against them. And so now
both sides have a right to protest. Both sides will have to recognize consequences for words they use that are incendiary. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
We are currently in a mixed moment in time about what is considered incendiary.
Yeah. And people don't realize, by the way, the ACLU will defend white supremacists for their protest rights. And a lot of people don't realize that. It's like, no, that's one of the things I do love about the ACLU, by the way. Not because they're helping Nazis. Sorry, I just got a weird Charlie horse cramp. Why did you just jerk like that? Not because they're helping them, but because they help everybody. Their job is, in my opinion, the American Civil Liberties Union, is to defend, especially the First Amendment, right? That seems to be, and in any capacity. And honestly, it gives them way more weight because they don't care which side you're on. They just care, are your rights being violated?
Right.
And I actually appreciate that. And honestly, being an American, I've heard this before, so this isn't like, me coming up with this idea. But it means, the First Amendment to me means you have the right to say anything you want, but it means the person you absolutely disagree with has the right to say anything they want, and you need to fucking take it. All right.
Yeah.
You if you want them to take what you have to say, you have to take what they have to say. All right. You don't have to listen, but if you are listening, you got to take it. I mean, you can't fight them because they're disagreeing with you. As long as they're practicing. Now, you could if you wanted to, but there are consequences. And so,
yes.
I don't know. The big one though, peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances is another reason.
We should do those things more.
We should do those things more.
Right.
I would agree with that.
I think that we should be protesting the government in regards to.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's one of the great things about our government. It's probably one of the things that I bet our politicians get annoyed with because we can, because we get to complain to them. But there's a big reason why this is the First Amendment. And honestly, I think it's kind of like the most important amendment to build off of. So I do agree with. Now, yes, it was written for a white man at the time, but it's not. It no longer applies to just the white man anymore.
It doesn't, but I would also like us to, within that, for people to really understand what people are talking about when they talk about equality and critical race theory and discussing issues, right? Yes, it no longer applies to just white men. But if we're going to be fully honest about when in American culture that actually became true legally, we have to look at the Civil Rights Act, right? The last part, which was in the 60s, civil rights was in 68, and how when the government said we actually have been actively discriminating against our own citizens. So it wasn't even till over 130 something years later before it really truly wasn't just for white men,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And then whenever, if you look at women's suffrage, like it wasn't meant for women,
Nope.
particularly white women, until
Yep.
the early 1900s.
Yep.
So for all that we have around this document, we're still very new in the fight for it to truly include everyone.
Well, and it is funny because I mean, you got to wonder if like there was the because I mean, I don't think, and I'd love to look more into the history of this. I guess I've never looked at it. Is there one of those like quote unquote off the record conversations that some of these guys has? You know, we're not talking about the slaves, right? You know, you guys, you know, this is just us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or were they so blinded to their own hypocrisy? You know, were they so blinded to go?
No.
Well, in the mindset of like, well, there could be the mindset of like, well, they're not even religious. They don't have a religion. You know, they're not even human. You know, they're not even. They're not like. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that like I believe, obviously, but I mean, like, are they?
They knew what they were doing. There were people who enslaved other people who subjugated women, whether they used their religion at the time to do that or not. You know, which is interesting because I love seeing like video clip outtakes from like movies from the 1930s, right? This whole different time, but you see the outtakes, and they're just cursing and laughing and having fun, right? We are not that far removed as people from those people 100 years ago, so we're not massively far removed from people, 300 years ago, right?
Well, in fact,
knew that they were enslaving people. Like they knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, I mean, and honestly, I mean, when you read the language of this, and if you read like letters or quotes that the founding fathers had, you're like, they spoke way better than anybody does now. Really, like they were.
Which means they knew what they were doing. They were intelligent people.
Yeah, you're right. They were intelligent people, and you're right when you say that we're not that far removed from them. I wonder. And believe me, I'm not setting them up on a pedestal. I'm just wondering, like, was the education for them that much better than we have for ourselves now? I mean, do we know more science and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely, because that's part of the progress. But are we as like thoughtful on that philosophical level as a group? And maybe we are. Maybe we're not looking at the fact that we're only looking at the top 1% educated people too. I mean, that's the thing, is these guys were usually the leaders. They had the better education, they had the better rearing because they had money and they had all those things.
Right.
And then there was a way more have-nots that could barely speak good English, really. So that is something to consider as well. Is, we are looking at the elites of the day having these conversations. The same ones that we now say we don't want to listen to.
Exactly.
We don't want to listen to the lead educated. Now, obviously, hypocrisy was abound there, and you can find that anywhere. But it is one of those things that's really fascinating too. Is, wow, we really want to revere these guys because they were so highly educated and they put together this amazing document. Flawed as it is, they still did a pretty fantastic job for a foundation. And it actually trapped our country. That's what's funny about it, right? I mean, it trapped our country in a way where we had to look back and go, holy shit, we are violating this. I mean, it took us, like you said, like 130 plus years to finally recognize that, and even longer to really like pay more attention to it. But it's in the document that they created. And so, there is, that's part of the greatness of the document, right? But yeah, are we that much smarter than they were, really? I mean,
that's interesting. I like that framework because I feel like not that we are going to necessarily do the next 10 episodes about the Bill of Rights, but I know we both definitely want to talk about the second one.
Yes, we do.
And I think for the next, the next episode possibly, to really jump into how smart they were, but what about the guns?
Well, and that's one where I think, we can lead into that. I think that's one where technology was not foreseen. And you could say the same thing in the First Amendment, by the way. You could say the exact same thing about the First Amendment. I'm not
social
saying I
media was
agree with it. I'm just saying you could say, well, they didn't foresee technology. They didn't foresee Facebook and
right.
misinformation and like how massive it could become. There was no way they could foresee cell phones and smartphones and what they could do.
Right.
Um, and if they could have foreseen it, would they have done something different? Is an interesting conversation, right? But I think it really holds true for the Second Amendment. All right,
And we have to. Then next time we have to do
we'll
a
have to get into
whole
that. We are,
deep
yeah,
dive.
we've hit our time limit, man. I think
Yeah, this was good.
it was
This
good. I
was good.
mean, you know, I love the First Amendment, man. I think it's as being from the
Yes.
press, it was really important to be able to hold true to that,
Yes.
and
As a writer, for me,
huh,
like I cannot have that. You know.
yeah, and
So.
I think it is actually probably the one that we almost take the most for granted, in a
Mm,
way, because we use it the most too. I mean, it's not like you use no soldiers should be quartered in any house. While it was incredibly pertinent to them, that
yeah.
was a third that it became the Third Amendment. That's how
Yeah.
important it was for them, right? And I understand why it was important because that's but I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on the Third Amendment really because
I don't
it's
think so. I
right,
don't think so.
um, and and then there was the Fourth Amendment. That's important. In fact, I feel like the Fourth Amendment should jump up in rank to the Third Amendment because it's that's your right to privacy, right? That's the one we use for
Mm.
and
Oh boy, we have to do that one.
oh, we
You know, I
will.
have
We'll do the Fourth
thoughts.
Amendment. I know you do. I know you do. I know that. I know what's going to be on that conversation. But anyway, guys, we do have to roll. This is a great
Yes.
conversation. Bill of
Yes,
Rights. We didn't talk about cannabis at all, but we'll have to talk about. There's a cannabis Bill of Rights, I think, and that we can discuss at
Oh
some
yes,
point.
we can definitely talk about
We
that.
definitely should discuss that. But it was a fun conversation today,
Yeah.
guys. I hope you guys enjoyed as much as we did. We please keep a track of what's going on HC Magazine. We do have the THC Championship going on, and we would love to take it to a town near you. So please feel free to ask. Obviously, this is our non-cannabis related show, but because it's not all about weed, but it's a real pleasure. I hope everybody has a happy, safe 4th of July.
Yes.
Nobody blow your fingers off and hands. It's not worth it. Thank you.
Yes.
Incredible. It's a thing out here. I don't know why. But until next time, everybody, peace, love, and
And
there
happiness.
you go.